there's a wrong way and a right way. And if you listen good, you will know the right way. There is a voice inside talking to everyone.
Bob Marley inspired a movement. He stood for rebellion, peace, justice, and became a symbol the world still worships. But there was one person he left behind without a single memory of him, his youngest son, Damian.
And I would put on his songs and pretend to be on stage, and that was like a nightly ritual before going to bed. So it was always something that was there in my life.
For years, Damian stayed silent, writing music, building his own path, never confronting the darker truths hidden behind the legend. Until now. Damian Marley finally spills the truth about Bob Marley, and it's very bad.
When Bob Marley passed away in 1981, it wasn't just a man the world lost. It was a heartbeat that stopped across continents. Fans from every corner of the globe collectively mourned the absence of a figure whose voice and vision transcended music, resonating as a universal symbol of hope, resistance, and cultural pride. His songs had the power to unite people, to give strength to the oppressed, and to evoke a sense of identity and purpose. Yet, in the midst of global mourning, there was a life touched by grief in a way that few could fully comprehend. That of a child named Damian Jr. Gong Marley. At the tender age of 2, Damian could not grasp the enormity of his father's absence, nor could he comprehend the void left in the hearts of millions who revered Bob Marley not merely as an entertainer, but as a symbol, a living legend whose aura would never fade. For Damian, the earliest years of life were shaped not by lullabies sung in the warm, gravelly tones of his father's voice, nor by the intimate passing down of musical mastery. Instead, his memories, or more precisely, the lack of them, were defined by the echoing void of father's absence. There was no gentle guidance, no shared moments strumming guitar strings side by side, no comforting words whispered during restless nights. The shadow of Bob Marley loomed larger than life, a figure of myth and legend whose presence was felt in stories, whispers, and global acclaim, yet rarely in the quiet, tender moments of daily life. Damian grew up surrounded by a legacy both immense and isolating, a world where the name Marley carried weight beyond understanding and expectations heavier than a child should ever bear. Kingston, Jamaica, thrummed with the rhythms and tales of Bob Marley. Streets, markets, and recording studios echoed with stories of the man whose music could lift spirits and challenge injustice. Yet, in the heart of this city, Damian was often on the periphery, observing a legacy that belonged to the world before it could belong to him. Surrounded by siblings, half-siblings, and a sprawling global fan base that revered the Marley name, he found himself both a part of this mythic world and painfully apart from it. The paradox was acute. A child who carried the surname of a living legend, yet felt its weight as both inheritance and exile. Bob Marley, in the eyes of the public, was more than a father. He was a godlike figure, a prophet whose music carried spiritual and cultural significance. But gods, by their very nature, rarely descend to the small, intimate acts of parenthood. They do not cradle a child through the night, offer solace during storms, or guide their first steps in the warmth of their hands. Damian's father existed more as an idea than as a man, a towering figure whose absence was as defining as his music's presence was unifying. To bear the Marley name was to inherit a legend, but also a profound loneliness, a void that no accolade or recognition could fill. The silence of those early years shaped Damian in ways the public could never fully see. There were no bedtime stories from Bob, no lessons about reggae's revolutionary spirit passed down firsthand. What remained was a name, Marley, a symbol that both defined him and threatened to suffocate him under its weight. The child, too young to understand grief, inherited a world of expectation, myth, and silence. His story began in the shadow of a father whose influence was universal but whose touch was painfully absent. And it is in this tension between legacy and loss that Damian's journey begins. A journey to claim identity, understanding, and a voice within a story already etched in global memory. This is the story of the boy left behind, the child who became a man navigating not just the musical inheritance of Bob Marley, but the intricate, often hidden fractures of family, fame, and cultural legacy. It is a story of discovery, resilience, and confrontation with truths long buried beneath the glossy surface of global adoration. From the echoing halls of Marley's public triumphs to the quiet corridors of private secrets, Damian Marley's path reveals a saga of love, absence, and the enduring pursuit of truth. Behind the global admiration for Bob Marley lay a complex and often hidden reality, one that few outsiders ever glimpsed. While the world celebrated him as a unifying symbol, a cultural icon, and a prophet of peace, the private life of Bob Marley was far from simple. His relationships, personal choices, and the family he left behind created a web of complexities that would ripple through generations. And Damian Marley, as one of his children, inherited both the glory and the burden of that tangled legacy. Bob Marley's personal life was, in many ways, as intricate as his music. He fathered children with multiple women, and the official record recognizes 13 of his offspring. 4 of these women bore his children, each contributing to a sprawling family network that was both blessed with talent and shadowed by tension. Yet, public celebrations of Marley rarely acknowledged the fractures lurking beneath the surface. Damian's mother, Cindy Breakspear, who had been crowned Miss World in 1976, was Bob Marley's mistress while he remained married to Rita Marley. This complicated beginning placed Damian in a unique position. He was part of the Marley lineage, carrying the name, yet born into an invisible divide that would shape his sense of belonging and identity for years to come. Damian did not grow up in the same household as all his siblings, nor did he experience the rhythms of daily life in the Marley family home in Trenchtown. While some of Bob's children shared the streets, studios, and daily routines that bonded the family, Damian's childhood was often spent on the edges, observing but rarely participating. This physical and emotional distance was a quiet but persistent reality, leaving him with a sense of exclusion even as the world celebrated the family name. Damian's absence at Bob Marley's funeral was a particularly poignant symbol of his place outside the immediate family circle, a child whose connection to his father was defined more by stories and reverence than by first-hand experience. The weight Damian carried was multifaceted. On one level, he bore the expectations that came with being a Marley. The name itself was a brand, a global cultural force that demanded attention, respect, and responsibility. On another, he bore the emotional cost of absence. While his siblings experienced moments of intimate guidance and familial support, Damian navigated a childhood shadowed by the myth of a father he could not know directly. He existed in a liminal space, connected to the world, yet isolated from the intimacy of family life. The world recognized him as Marley, but that recognition did not equate to acceptance, nor did it fill the gaps left by his father's absence. Rita Marley, Bob's wife, worked tirelessly to maintain cohesion within the family. She became a stabilizing figure, attempting to stitch together a fragmented tapestry with patience and perseverance. Yet even her efforts could not entirely mend the invisible fractures. Each child had a unique connection to their father, shaped by circumstance, timing, and proximity. Damian, born into a high-profile affair, faced questions about legitimacy, loyalty, and recognition that colored his upbringing in ways outsiders could never fully understand. These dynamics were further complicated by the public's fascination with the Marley family, which often blurred private matters with global spectacle. Damian grew up in the shadow of both reverence and scrutiny, a challenging environment for a young boy still forming his own identity. Despite the challenges, these early experiences forged resilience. Damian learned to navigate spaces where recognition and exclusion coexisted, where adoration and isolation were intimately intertwined. He witnessed the global impact of his father's music, absorbing lessons about influence, artistry, and social responsibility, yet he had to reconcile those lessons with the personal void left by absence. This duality, being both part of the myth and apart from the man, shaped Damian's worldview, creativity, and ambition. It instilled a deep understanding of legacy, one that encompassed both triumph and hardship, adoration and alienation. As the years unfolded, Damian began to grapple with questions about identity and belonging. Who was he beyond the Marley name? How could he honor a father he barely knew while carving out his own path? These were not simple questions, nor were they easily answered. The fractured beginnings of his life demanded introspection, courage, and perseverance. Yet within this struggle lay the seeds of strength, creativity, and purpose. Damian would emerge from these fractures not merely as a bearer of a name, but as an artist and individual ready to confront the complexities of both family and legacy. The fractures, while painful, were also instructive. They taught Damian about the realities of power, the nuances of human relationships, and the challenges of navigating a world where personal bonds intersected with global expectation. Through observation, reflection, and occasional guiding figure, Damian began to understand that inheritance is more than a name. It is responsibility, challenge, and opportunity intertwined. This understanding would later fuel his determination to assert agency over his father's legacy, to uncover hidden truths, and speak boldly as a man who had grown up in the shadow of a legend. Damian's journey through these early fractures highlights a universal truth. The intersection of legacy and absence can be both isolating and transformative. For every public moment of celebration and recognition, there existed private moments of uncertainty, longing, and questioning. These experiences did not diminish the power of the Marley name. Rather, they informed Damian's approach to life, artistry, and responsibility. The child left behind in 1981 would, over time, become a man prepared to navigate not only the music and fame, but also the hidden truths, challenges, and expectations entwined with being a Marley. While the world celebrated Bob Marley's music as timeless and unifying, few understood the depths of his creative process during the final years of his life. Hidden away in the archives of Tuff Gong Studios, the empire Marley himself had built in Kingston lay hours upon hours of recordings that remained largely unheard by the public. These secret sessions, spanning from 1979 to 1981, capture Marley in an intensely introspective state, revealing facets of his personality and his struggles that polished, released tracks could never convey. For Damian Marley, accessing these recordings would be both a revelation and a journey into the private world of a father he scarcely knew. Tuff Gong Studios, founded by Marley with a vision of creating a sanctuary for creativity and cultural expression, housed a labyrinth of tapes, demos, and experimental recordings. The studio was a place where Marley could explore, experiment, and confront the raw elements of his artistry without the constraints of public expectation. While posthumous albums had made their way into the hands of fans worldwide, those who knew the vaults, sound engineers, producers, and industry insiders, hinted at dozens of unreleased tracks, each carrying nuances, messages, and expressions that had been deliberately withheld. These secret sessions were not mere outtakes. They were windows into Marley's state of mind, his fears, his insights, and, perhaps most strikingly, his warnings. Engineers who worked closely with Marley recalled the tonal shift in his music during these last years. The playful optimism and outwardly positive messaging that characterized earlier works gave way to lyrics that were introspective, layered with cryptic references to betrayal, surveillance, and caution. Marley's voice, though recognizable, carried an urgency, a fragility that hinted at both physical decline and emotional strain. In these recordings, he spoke not just of music, but of life, of the forces around him that he perceived as threats, and of a world where the stakes were far higher than fame or fortune. Some tracks from the secret sessions contained alternate verses, changed lyrics, and experimental arrangements that conveyed messages Marley may have wished to express cautiously. According to producers who have handled these recordings, it was as if Marley was encoding warnings and insights within his music, aware of the need to communicate yet cautious of exposure. Rumors circulated that certain songs referenced unseen observers, allies whose loyalty was in question, and attempts to exert control over Marley's creative and financial empire. These were not idle speculations. The recordings, imbued with tension, suggested a man navigating both physical illness and a landscape fraught with manipulation and danger. For Damian, discovering the existence of these recordings was like uncovering fragments of his father's mind, pieces of a puzzle he had never been able to see in his early years. The vaults, which contained materials largely restricted to family members or select insiders, were a treasure trove of insight, offering Damian a rare opportunity to understand Bob Marley not just as a cultural icon, but as a man confronting his mortality, grappling with trust, and striving to protect a legacy that extended far beyond music. Each reel, tape, and demo was a testament to a father whose presence had been absent, yet whose voice now spoke across decades, offering lessons, warnings, and reflections. The secrecy surrounding these sessions was deliberate. Marley's estate, wary of the potential for controversy, controlled access tightly. Legal battles over ownership, rights, and narrative authority ensured that much of this material remained hidden. Decisions to withhold tracks were influenced not only by concerns about public perception, but also by the need to preserve a carefully curated image of Marley as a unifying, benevolent figure. Yet within the studio walls, away from public scrutiny, the recordings told a different story, one of vigilance, calculation, and a complex interplay between personal safety, artistic integrity, and familial legacy. Damian Marley's eventual access to the archives was transformative. Listening to the tapes allowed him to hear the tonal subtleties, the cryptic messages, and the hidden concerns that Bob Marley had embedded in his music. The experience bridged the gap that years of absence had created, providing a connection to a father who had been larger than life, yet inaccessible in tangible ways. Damian realized that understanding his father's final years would require not just listening to the music, but interpreting the context, the emotions, and the unspoken warnings within it. The secret sessions also illuminated the interplay between artistry and power. Marley was acutely aware of the forces surrounding him, industry executives, family dynamics, and the broader cultural machinery, and he used music as a vehicle to express caution and assert control. This awareness resonates deeply with Damian's later efforts to navigate the same complex terrain, where ownership, rights, and authenticity intersected with personal and cultural stakes. Each note, each verse, each deliberate pause in the recordings was a testament to Marley's ingenuity, his caution, and his enduring commitment to truth, even when truth was dangerous. These recordings, hidden from the world for decades, remain haunting in their intimacy and urgency. They reveal a man confronting mortality, navigating treachery, and striving to safeguard a legacy that was as much spiritual and cultural as it was financial. For Damian Marley, the secret sessions were more than archival treasures. They were a lifeline, a direct auditory connection to a father he had never fully known, a portal into the mind of a man whose genius, vulnerability, and foresight continue to resonate today. Through these sessions, Damian began to understand the duality of his inheritance, the celebrated Marley name, and the hidden truths it carried. He realized that carrying the legacy was not merely a matter of fame or musical talent, but of stewardship, vigilance, and courage. The secret sessions illuminated the stakes, the threats, and the responsibilities that came with being a Marley, a reality that would shape Damian's artistic vision, personal choices, and determination to protect and honor his father's true story. By 2005, Damian Marley had begun carving his own path in the world of music, stepping out of the colossal shadow cast by his father, Bob Marley. But it was a release of Welcome to Jamrock that would announce him not merely as Bob Marley's son, but as a force in his own right, an artist whose voice was urgent, unflinching, and deeply rooted in the realities of his homeland. The track did not just introduce Damian to international audiences. It shattered illusions about the life he was entering and the battles he would inherit. Welcome to Jamrock was more than music. It was a declaration. The song painted a raw, unflinching portrait of the violence, poverty, and systemic struggles that permeated the streets of Jamaica. Damian's lyrics capture the harsh truths that many outsiders could neither see nor imagine, revealing a world where survival was a daily challenge, and where social, political, and economic forces intertwined with personal danger. The song's chorus, repeated with biting intensity, became a global anthem that carried both anger and awareness, highlighting the resilience of those living in conditions often ignored by the world. Through this track, Damian was not simply performing. He was speaking truth to power, channeling a voice of conscience shaped by both heritage and personal experience. The release of Welcome to Jamrock earned Damian a Grammy, recognition that celebrated his artistry while simultaneously amplifying the stakes. Behind the scene, however, the success of the track exposed him to forces intent on controlling and influencing the Marley legacy. Executives, some tied to the Marley estate and others connected to global media conglomerates, sought to manage not only Damian's career, but also the narrative surrounding Bob Marley's name. These forces operated subtly, issuing pressures and veiled warnings that required Damian to navigate the treacherous intersection of family, legacy, and commercial interests. Damian's refusal to comply with these pressures became a defining moment. Contracts were presented that would have granted him wealth, exposure, and influence, but at the cost of his autonomy. He was asked to suppress references to letters and recordings his father had left behind, materials that contained truths deemed too sensitive or controversial. Damian, however, chose integrity over convenience, rejecting these offers and asserting his right to control his father's legacy on his own terms. In doing so, he faced professional setbacks, reduced radio airplay, canceled collaborations, and growing estrangement from parts of the Marley family. Yet his resolve remained steadfast, underscoring a commitment to truth over ease, authenticity over compromise. The song itself carried hidden layers, reflective of the complex dynamics Damian was navigating. Beyond the surface-level depiction of Jamaica's social struggles, the lyrics serve as a subtle critique of internal conflicts within the Marley estate. Welcome to war, Damian intoned, a line that resonated not just with the streets of Kingston, but with the battles he faced over control, trust, and access to his father's work. This dual meaning, the interplay between external and internal conflict, reflected Damian's emerging understanding of legacy. It was not merely inherited, but actively protected, contested, and defined by those willing to confront both visibility and shadow. Welcome to Jamrock also marked Damian's assertion of creative authority. Unlike many who might rely solely on the weight of a legendary surname, Damian infused his music with direct experience, personal observation, and social consciousness. His style blended reggae, dancehall, and hip-hop influences, crafting a sound that was both contemporary and reverential. Yet beneath the rhythms and beats lay a message of vigilance and resilience, a subtle yet persistent reminder that a legacy, no matter how revered, is vulnerable to manipulation, misrepresentation, and erasure. The track's reception was monumental. Fans around the world resonated with Damian's voice, his words, and the uncompromising honesty of his perspective. Critics praised the song not only for its musicality, but for its fearless engagement with social realities and personal narrative. Damian's emergence as an artist of integrity and vision signaled a generational shift. The son of a legend was not content to live in the shadows, but sought to redefine his identity, assert his authority, and illuminate truths previously obscured by myth and silence. Beyond the music, Welcome to Jamrock highlighted Damian's capacity for strategic insight. He recognized that legacy is not only preserved through fame or accolades, but through vigilance, courage, and the ability to challenge narratives that threaten authenticity. This understanding would become increasingly crucial as he navigated the complexities of the Marley estate, contested rights, and the interplay between family, business, and cultural heritage. Damian's journey, as revealed through the seminal track, was not only about personal success, but about stewardship, advocacy, and the protection of an inheritance that extended beyond wealth or fame to encompass identity, culture, and truth. In the aftermath of Welcome to Jamrock, Damian Marley's position within the global music landscape was secure, yet his path forward remained fraught. Fame brought visibility, but also illuminated the fractures, hidden conflicts, and competing interests that would shape the next chapters of his story. He was no longer simply the boy left behind. He was an artist, a truth seeker, and a custodian of one of the most significant cultural legacies of the 20th century. Through music, determination, and a profound sense of purpose, Damian began the delicate, courageous work of balancing respect for his father's memory with the pursuit of clarity, justice, and personal integrity. The release of Welcome to Jamrock was not just a milestone in Damian Marley's career. It was a declaration of independence, a statement of values, and a signal that the story of the Marley legacy would be neither simplified nor silenced. It marked the intersection of artistry, family, and moral responsibility, setting the stage for the battles to come and illuminating the path of a man who, despite early loss and complex inheritance, was prepared to step forward, claim his voice, and navigate the shadows of both fame and truth. And that's the story of Damian Marley, the boy who grew up in the shadow of a legend, only to rise and reclaim his father's legacy. From secret recordings to hidden truths and battles over the Marley name, Damian has shown that carrying a legendary legacy is about courage, honesty, and standing up for what's right. Bob Marley's music lives on, but Damian's journey reminds us that every legacy has its untold stories, and sometimes the truth is louder than the legend. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories behind music icons.